Welcome to the channel. Today I thought we'd have a little chat about pistol caliber bullets and the choices you have. Like anything in shooting, it's a bit of a toolbox, you know, different bullets do different things. And there's not a vast amount of information out there. Each manufacturer seems to push the virtues of its own manufactured stuff, but there's very little information in general. So today I thought we could dive into that and have a look whether we can come up with a consistent way of viewing things. This is predominantly for the newer shooter, and fundamentally bullet design balances three categories which roughly fall between defense, as in shooting people, hunting, as in shooting and killing animals, and target shooting. I'll bring you in closer. I think we have a very good representation of bullets here. We dug through, there's all sorts of weird stuff which we dug out for you. I want you to kind of like be close in so that you can see exactly what we're talking about. So the first category we're going to consider is velocity. This is how fast you can drive the bullet. Now, a pure lead bullet, obviously we're going to drive quite slowly. The lead itself is going to be experiencing a lot of stresses. There's talk about the rear of the bullet decaying from the heat and the force, and the rifling effectively destroying the side of the bullets and the evenness of the round. So that basically means that at the lowest end of the spectrum here, we have the lead bullet made out of purest lead. And once you have an amalgam of various metals, you can have a much harder cast bullet, and that'll take the stresses better. Now, to fend off the heat from the rear, we have either the painted bullet, that's this thing here. You can see the rear has also been painted. This is a reasonably modern invention. That's a rifle round. I'm sorry, I don't have any painted pistol caliber rounds. Or you can have a gas check in the rear. That's this metal thing here. It's you can stamp those out of Coke cans and God knows what. That will basically protect the rear of the bullet. After that, we have plated. Plated is something like this. It's a very thin coating of copper. For me, myself, and I, plating doesn't add that much. I have shot these plated bullets, depending on what you get, some of them quite slowly, and I'm literally ripping the jacket off these. You can see that when you have your bullet hole, there are a couple of striations coming off it. It looks almost, you know, like the sun with the rays coming out of it. And then finally, at the top of the spectrum, we then have the standard proper jacketed bullet with hard material around it. Now you can see this one here is still open at the bottom, but something like this, for example, this here, the 45, well, that has proper thick brass at the bottom and at the sides, and you should be able to push this at pretty much maximum velocity. Once we're past velocity, then we can look at penetration. And penetration, we start off with a good quality hollow point. This thing won't penetrate very deep at all. This round is going to expand aggressively in anything it hits and stop very early on. I have actually shot this. I was at my local club. I was in charge of testing these things against our rubber bricks when we here in the UK were first allowed hollow points. And these things cut a clean hole straight in. We had to ban them pretty much immediately because they're going to destroy the backstop. Next after that is the jacketed soft point. Not all of these are considered soft points. Some of them are just not jacketed to the top, so it's a bit of a minefield. But a jacketed soft point will expand. It just won't expand as quickly as the hollow point. And then following that, we have the standard jacketed round. Jacketed round won't expand. You can almost look upon this as a solid slug. There is all sorts of talk about TCs, for example, penetrating more than round noses. Oh, I don't know. If you want to penetrate less deep, then you use a hollow point. I wouldn't try thinking that the shape of the bullet you have gives you all that much. Next, we're going to talk about the cleanliness of the holes on paper that we're going to achieve. The worst thing for shooting paper is a round nose, because a round nose is going to pierce the center of the bit of paper, but it's not going to punch a clean hole through it. It's basically just like you stick a pencil in a bit of paper. You can take a round nose target. I know people who are very stingy who've actually taken pistol targets home and they iron it, and it basically effectively repairs the paper again, because the paper isn't actually removed from the target, it's just pushed in. And so when you're target shooting and you're shooting targets that are scored, you're much better off using something like a wad cutter, which creates a perfect round hole very aggressively, or at the very least a semi-wad cutter gives you slightly better ballistics, but will still provide a reasonably good hole. And ballistics, yes, but it's probably more to do with the fact that this will feed very well. So if you use these in a semi-automatic pistol, I think a round nose is hard to beat. I think something like a wad cutter is still going to feed very well, and a semi-wad cutter, it'll probably still do all right. If you try shooting a wad cutter out of a semi-automatic, well, that's not going to work at all. I mean, it's just not going to feed. This will only work in a revolver. This will probably not work in a fussy automatic. That should really work just about all the time. Next, we're going to talk about the base of the bullet, and here it gets real interesting. We really only have a flat bottom bullet in rifle shooting. There you have something like a boat tail. A boat tail is where the rear of the bullet curves in. This is the closest I can find to a boat tail for pistols, and even this, I would say, probably is more for ease of seating than for ballistics. Realistically, you're not going to get the benefit out of a boat tail because you're unlikely to shoot distance. Now, I know that I might get in trouble here with some long-range pistol shooters, but the long-range pistol shooters that I know, well, they tend to use rifle rounds. Only other thing there which I should mention as a point of interest is the hollow base round. The hollow base round is this guy here, and you basically have a lead skirt in the rear that will expand into the grooves, and Scuttlebug has it that this will provide better accuracy for guns that suffer with accuracy. Let's say it that way. I have used hollow base bullets in the past for muzzle-loading pistols. Muzzle-loading revolvers is a better phrase. There you are limited in the speed you can drive these guys in. If you push a hollow base bullet too fast, you'll just rip the bottom of the skirt off. It'll literally stay in your barrel, or it'll pop out as two pieces. Crimp of a bullet, if you look at this guy here, for example, this does not have a crimping groove. I would be dubious about using this in a gun that suffers from either recoil or stressful loading like you would in an automatic handgun. An automatic handgun, it's you're using the bullet on a feed ramp, and I really rather would prefer a good crimp groove like this guy here has. So for example, if you have a revolver and you don't have a crimp groove and you just kind of like softly crimping it on the side of the case, well, if you have a hard round, you pull the trigger, you might find that the heads of all the bullets fall out, literally drop out of the cylinder of the gun together with the powder and whatever you not. A good crimp is not to be underestimated. And here in the UK, where we have a lot of underlevers, where you have a tubular magazine, where all the rounds basically sit back on back, and every time you fire, you get a bit of recoil and the rounds stand still and then they bounce back. You get a compressive force. And yet again, I think a crimp groove, for some reason, they've not as popular. I mean, people kind of like crimp into this anywhere, but I think you're much better off having a clearly defined crimp groove that you can put a hard crimp into, and then that round is not going to disassemble or compress or anything else. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about grease or bullet coating. Now, when you shoot your bullet, you're basically rubbing the bullet against the inside of the barrel, against the rifling of your barrel. And if you just take an ungreased lead bullet like this, it'll actually just lead your barrel. It'll literally leave lead behind in your barrel, and then you have to find various ways of getting it out of there, either by mechanical means or in the olden days. I still know shooters who bought old thermometers and use the mercury from them to create an amalgam with the lead to pull all the lead out of the barrel. So That strikes me as an incredibly dangerous idea, and God knows what you're going to do with the amalgam you get after. The point that I'm getting at, you need to lubricate your bullets. Now, the choices you have there is you can either use a sort of heat-resistant paint. You could use liquid alox. This bullet has been liquid aloxed. So you can see it has a sort of waxy sort of coating. You could use the traditional lubrication that you see here. So you have your loop groove. So that's a loop groove, that's a loop groove, that's a loop groove, and over here then that's your crimp groove effectively. And this, as you fire it, is going to lay down the sort of waxy surface and coat the inside of your barrel with it. And that'll basically mean that the next round that you fire over it isn't going to lead all over the barrel. I think the easiest, if you buy ready-made bullets, you'll get something like this. If you home cast at home, I highly recommend liquid alox. Liquid alox is cheap and very simple to use and reasonably idiot-proof. Doesn't look wonderful, okay, but you know, there it is. You can also get these painted guys. That's another alternative that you can have. In a jacketed bullet like this, well, you don't need to worry about it. In the fullness of time, you might get a thin coating of copper. One more aspect which we should talk about, which is accuracy. I think that accuracy is often talked about and is almost useless information. I think that the chances that a specific round is more accurate than every other, consistently, so that a TC will always beat a round nose, I think that isn't there. To some extent, that means then that the chances are much higher that a particular gun has a preference than that one type of bullet is consistently better than another. I know target shooters that use a wad cutter. I know target shooters that use a round nose, and I know target shooters that use a semi-wad cutter. So you should experiment. The accuracy load that I had for my 357 Marlin was a 38 load, under 1,000 feet per second, in a 357 case, using a lead TC wad cutter. And I won the Hendon League competition number 9, I think 4 years running. And that is not a bullet that you would ever see on a forum discuss as overly accurate. I think you just have to experiment. And the first thing, if you want to find an accuracy bullet, is find something that's repeatable. Find a particular bullet that works well in your gun and then buy lots of it. For my 45 ACP, I had a wonderful round using a HN truncated cone, sort of painted, sort of goldy copper color. Looked very tacky, but boy was it accurate. Can I find that bullet now? I cannot. They've discontinued it. And that is gut-wrenching because, you know, I spent a lot of time developing that load. So, in final conclusion, then, accuracy is something, well, that you have to work on yourself. Try and find something that works for your gun. And if you do find something that works well for your gun, bunker a lot of it. So, I hope that was interesting, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.